I am your host, Christene Marie, and tonight we are diving into a subject that frankly took me 28 years to address, and a subject that is one that I need to continually return to. I was thinking about it today while I was driving and figured it would be the very thing that we talked about tonight. Tonight, we were talking about what is vulnerability and why does it matter? Why does emotional openness and why does the ability to connect with people on an emotional level even matter in the first place? And so, kind of some backstory for you, for those who are new to the Knowing Show. I grew up very much so having an aversion to emotions, and I really believed, like I really thought that the more I kept emotions at bay, the stronger I was. And I just viewed emotions as weakness, and there's multiple reasons for why this was, but for the most part, emotions were something that I shamed and looked down on. And the more that I allowed myself to bottle and suppress emotions, the more they would grow inside of me, and I didn't understand that this is what was happening. And so then when I did express emotions, um, I would cry, and I was upset that I would cry, and I would actually get emotional while I expressed emotions. And so for about 28 years, I went back and forth between trying to have no emotion, and I would even write in my journal, I wish I didn't care so much. I just really loved people and loved life, and sought to only ever experience the good emotions, and any bad emotions tried to keep at bay. And with that came just a very strange dissonance with myself, and ultimately disconnection with myself, where I actually, by way of trying to suppress and all the what I deemed and what other people deemed as negative emotions, I then could no longer hear kind of my inner compass, which is effectively the voice of intuition. I could no longer hear her voice guiding me or informing me, hey, that person's not safe. This situation isn't safe. And so there really was a real cost to the suppression of emotions over the years. So not only did I become disconnected with intuition, but I also became very much so disconnected with my physical body. And there's something about, you usually get a sense in our body when intuition is telling us that there's a red flag or a warning. We can get a tightness of chest or a queasy stomach, or just start feeling uncomfortable about a situation. But if we are so used to suppressing her voice when there is a negative emotion that might be coming up, because sometimes a negative emotion is associated with those warning signs, or there's a negative emotion, and I'm saying negative emotions in air quotes, because that's how I was raised to view emotions, as though there are good emotions and bad emotions. And anything less than joy or peace or kindness is a bad emotion. And so all of those were swept away, but we don't really get to choose, oh, I'm only going to listen to these emotions and not those. And so as I chose to eliminate a lot of the emotions that came up for me naturally, I effectively learned to disconnect from intuition itself. And so as I became disconnected from intuition, I also became disconnected from my physical body, because that's where we get those sensed emotions and sensations in our body alerting us that there's something wrong. It's like when you touch a hot stove, you're like, ouch, that burns. That's effectively how intuition alerts us, is that we get a sensation in our physical body that there's a warning sign, watch out, stop, proceed with caution. But if we're so used to shutting down anything negative that we sense or feel, we inevitably end up shutting down our intuition, and we get disconnected from her voice. So this is what we're diving into tonight. What actually is vulnerability? Why is it important? Why does it matter? And so before I dive in, I just want to say hello to my friends here in the chat. Brian, good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Both of you, Brian J and Brian C. Good to see you guys. Usman, I don't actually know who that is, but I'm Christene Marie. Good to meet you. Refrigerator. I don't know what you wrote, but I'm glad you're here. Brian, is there an order to nature, or is everything chaos and chance? Man, you're coming in with the heavy hitters tonight. Today, I actually loved that question you asked. Brian joined a guest and I on the Craft and Calling podcast. I have another business podcast that I have, and he joined us over there. And we were talking, and Brian, I just so appreciated your questions. You always ask really, really good ones. I need to sit with this one. Frankly, I feel like I want to better understand it. If you can expound a little bit more, I feel like I'm not um I feel like you're winning me here. You're beating me on the smarts here. I think I know what you mean, but frankly, I want to make sure that I fully understand before I go and offer a thought and then I'm not understanding. Actually, one thing that I really appreciate in debates, both parties will come back the next day and one will offer they'll say, okay, this is what I heard you say. This is my understanding of your argument. And then you tell me if I'm right, and they cannot begin until both party adequately effectively reflects what the other person's point of contention is. And y'all, I think all of us could use more of that in our arguments with our counterparts. But going back to the conversation for tonight, and Brian, I do want to hear more about your question here. um, I I really believe that vulnerability is one of the most important pieces to experiencing the full range of being human. And when I say vulnerability, again, going back to defining terms and really understanding what is it that I mean when I say vulnerability. And frankly, I'd love to hear in the chat, how do you define vulnerability? Because I actually looked up a couple other definitions, but I wrote down before I looked up other definitions, I wrote down what I have come to experience vulnerability to be. And so I'll read off someone else's definition first and then share mine. I went to Brene Brown. Y'all, when I first started my journey, so I was 28 years old, and I had never really let myself honor any emotions that were deemed negative. But when I finally had what I call or kind of consider to be my third bout with brokenness, like the third time I really felt cracked open, I was like, okay, I have to let brokenness do its work. I have to allow myself to really be broken open rather than trying to like paste and glue myself back together. And so I just sat there with the broken pieces of my heart and soul and was like, okay, what's in here? I've never done the work to come to know who I am. So who am I? Who did God make me to be? Why am I this way? And really asking some of those deeper questions of how did I end up here? And so for those of you who don't know, my first reckoning with brokenness was my brother-in-law. He was 26 years old. He and my sister had met on Valentine's Day, their senior year of high school, and just had this like fairy tale relationship. They were just so in love, and it was so sweet. And they had a 3-week-old baby girl, and they were both 26, and he was killed by a drunk driver, and that just obliterated her life, obviously, and our family. And the second time that I kind of experienced brokenness was my husband of 6 years at the time said that he wasn't sure he wanted to stay married anymore. He had brought up an open relationship, and I was like, I don't know. And then he was like, oh, I'm kidding. But there was a lot of kind of just like wondering what the grass was like on the other side because we both got married so young. I was 20 when we got married. He was 23, and we actually grew up in a very good Christian conservative environment. So we never actually had been with anybody else. And so I think that there was that kind of lure. And then the third time that I officially really broke open was when he officially left. And that was when I was like, okay, I need to look in the mirror hardcore and assume every bit of responsibility for why this marriage ended. And otherwise, if I don't, I'm going to play the victim for the rest of my life. And so in that process, I actually, even right beforehand, I realized before my husband officially left, I started reading Brene Brown's Daring Greatly. And that book was the first book that really gave me permission to consider that emotions could be something good, much less something not just good, but like innately human. Like emotions are a key part of who you and I are. And if we're trying to live void of emotion, we're living void of 50% of us. We have the left hemisphere of our brain and the right hemisphere. And so our emotions are a gateway and a pathway to our innermost being. Our emotions really are so much of what makes you and I different. It allows for us to care for people, to be in relationship. And so if I valued relationship, which I did, in fact, relationships are, I believe, and I have found for most human beings, the intent and the goal. The goal is belonging. The goal is love. And when we really get to the heart of the matter, that's what we want. Yes, inventing things, yes, creating things, all of that is wonderful and good. But why were we created in community if not to engage with one another in community and in love? And so in order to do that, I had to be a full functioning human being, and I wasn't, because I was shutting off 50% of me. And so her definition of vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and exposure, which, geez, that covers so many different spectrums. And so vulnerability isn't just being emotionally vulnerable, it's being creatively vulnerable. It's being it's being innovative. It's allowing for something new to come to the surface. And that's where I love uncertainty, because when we allow for creativity, when we allow for creation, creation is on the other side of vulnerability, is actually when we allow ourselves to give into the unknown, to give into the exposure of, I don't know what I'm going to find, but I'm going to unveil myself, my creative intellect, my emotions, my spirit. I'm going to allow myself to be explored, to see what can I create? What can I design? What is new? What is something truly authentic that has never before been experienced? And so in Daring Greatly, Brene Brown talks, yes, about emotional vulnerability, but she also talks about the vulnerability that is necessary for companies to advance. One of our clients, I have a branding and marketing business, and I work with organizations and also individuals. And so one of the individuals we work with is a executive coach who's also a therapist. And so he spent 20 years deep diving into the psychology of the human brain and how that translates into organizational growth. And to that point, I was doing a webinar with him and another person from Harvard, and we were talking about psychological safety and how critical and how necessary psychological safety is for the advancement of the organization. If someone does not feel the ability to be vulnerable, to be psychologically safe, to share new ideas, then they're never going to offer anything other than the status quo. So if you want your business to catalyze, to move forward, to advance, to move into especially uncharted territory, this concept of vulnerability is so important. Because if I feel as the employee that my ideas are going to get shot down, or that you're going to think I'm stupid if I offer up an idea that actually isn't that good at the end of the day, then I'm never going to share. And how many of us are actually sitting on genius ideas, but we don't feel vulnerably safe in the workplace? Same thing goes at home. Same thing goes on in the bedroom. Y'all, how many of us are actually wanting to try something new, exciting or kind of flirty or fun, but we actually are terrified of how the other person's going to react to us? Kids with our parents wanting to go do something fun, but man, when's the last time we actually felt safe emotionally with our parents to share about the good news about the new, the new job, or even the baby that's coming, or the wedding? And how many times do we actually feel shut down emotionally when there's something that actually really brings us joy, or something we're really excited about? Vulnerability is necessary at every single level of our relationships, because every area of our life, for the most part, is contingent on the health of the relationship. Our jobs, our sexual life, our intimacy, our family, our own personal development. Because here's the thing, vulnerability is also in regards to the relationship with ourselves. And it also extends to our relationship with God. Vulnerability goes inward, upward, and outward. And so this concept of what she says, uncertainty, risk, and exposure, do we even allow ourselves to be seen by us? Because if we're not allowing ourselves to be seen by us, there is no way we're going to allow other people to see us, much less God, the creator of the universe. And so we'll constantly be hiding. We'll constantly be remaining small. We'll constantly be existing in this cage of perfection and performance and people pleasing. And so if we ever want to break free from that, we have to learn to be willing to step into and it's not even step into, perhaps it's step out of the cage. Step out of the cage and shed the layers that we've been hiding under. And for me, so much of that was perfection. I really, and frankly, I still get caught up in this. I still have to just ship it. Just let it go. Just let it out. And if it's imperfect, that's fine. But so much of my worth and my value was tied to the perfection, the performance, or the people pleasing for so much of my life because I didn't know who I was. So let me shapeshift, let me be a chameleon and earn the connection I'm craving, even in the workplace, but especially in those intimate relationships with our family and loved ones. So just a quick moment, jumping here in the chat to say hello. Alyssa, thank you. That's so kind. Jeanette, thank you for coming here. Gordito, good evening. Buddha, I'm glad you're here. Christopher Adams, I agree. A mature conversation always ends with finding some good common ground. I love that. Alex, vulnerable for a man. I see what I can only imagine how vulnerable that has to be. AJ, thank you for joining. Everything happens in the world in specific order. Okay. I'm going to save this question. I'm going to actually write this down so I can save it because I want to make sure that I get back to your question, Brian. Ambrose, okay. The quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. Wow. Oh my gosh. I love that definition. Okay. So I asked I asked all of y'all to drop in the chat, how do you define vulnerability? And Brian says the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. And then Brian, later on, you say admitting you're scared or sharing deep feelings with someone, making you open to rejection. Isn't that wild? Isn't it wild that on the other side of the vulnerability that we're talking about, there's so much. That's why she says daring greatly, because there's a vulnerability that it makes us exposed. It makes us exposed to rejection, exposed to attack. And you know what I want to do? I actually want to just take a minute and actually pull up the quote from The Man in the Arena by Theodore Roosevelt. For those of you who know me, I love this quote. 1912 speech. All right, I'm gonna pull this up because it's so good. Y'all, this speech that he gave is nestled into it is The Man in the Arena that so many people know, but really it's so much more than that. It's so much more. Citizens in the Republic is the name of it. It's so much more than that because it really speaks to being brave enough to put ourselves in a position where we could get rejected, where we are exposed. And then the question becomes, well, who are we doing it for? Are we doing it for the praise and accolades of everyone around us? Or are we doing it because we know that is exactly what we're called to do. We know that that's where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be in that arena doing the work. I have felt so much like going live has been something that I felt called to. And there's been times where it's been really discouraging at times, but I cannot fail to remember I'm not doing this for people to be nice to me. There's been some pretty mean comments sometimes. People have been less mean, I think, since we've all gotten to know each other. But for the first couple of weeks, it was like horrifying what people were saying. And so if I'm listening to them sneering at me versus keeping my head down, operating almost like a horse with blinders on, I love that analogy. I am in this arena, my own arena. I'm fighting against my own demons. I'm fighting against the things that keep me back, that hold me back. I am so focused on how and where I need to grow and change to get to the next level. I'm so committed to that which I'm called to. And y'all, the more each one of us does this, the more you and I actually define our own arena, go into it day after day after day, even go in there with people. I was just in there just before I got on this call. I was in the knowing arena with someone else, and we were doing one-to-one work where she was willing to go deep. She was willing to have me ask her hard questions. We went to her past. We went to her childhood. We went to her being 8 years old at church where people said horrible things. And those moments shape us. those moments when we think about what we're vulnerable about, it's those moments so often in childhood where they have power over us. So now, to your point, Brian, what makes us exposed and vulnerable for attack and rejection, what makes us vulnerable to attack and rejection so often is what we never healed in the past. And that comes up in the present. And now it's not just 32-year-old Christene sitting here, but it's 8-year-old Christene sitting here who's vulnerable and open to attack from somebody that has nothing to do and has no idea about what happened, 20 years ago. And so that's where we and us doing the work and us doing the work of going into the knowing arena to heal, to tend to ourselves, to go back to those moments where it was painful and be daring enough to move through whatever that pain was that came up, or whatever occurrence that was. Man, that yields so much, because vulnerability, we actually, here's an interesting thought. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Our vulnerability can change over the years as we grow and heal from the past. Otherwise, we remain continuously and forever vulnerable about the same things over and over and over again. But when we're constantly growing, our vulnerability changes because it's a new area where we feel uncomfortable. Like she said, uncertainty. We're entering into the arena to experience and engage with something which we do not know. And we're coming in and being like, oh, what does it feel like to be uncomfortable in this area of my life? But if we're so tethered to and tied to the pain of the past and we never heal from it, then we're never allowing ourselves to advance into new territories of the arena, to evolve and grow and thus level up. If we want our lives to level up externally, our jobs, getting promotions, getting a better partner, getting, more healthy physically, but we're not doing the internal work to level up, then why should we ever think our external life is going to change? So I'm going to pull up this quote here because it's so, so, so meaningful to me. And it's so apt considering this conversation. So this is kind of midway through the conversation, or the speech that he gave. All right. It is well if a large proportion of the leaders in any republic, in any democracy, are, as a matter of course, drawn from the classes represented in this audience today, but only provided that those classes possess the gifts of sympathy with plain people and devotion and of great devotion to great ideals. You and those like you have received special advantages. You have, all of you, had the opportunity for mental training. Many of you have had leisure. Most of you have had the chance for the enjoyment of life far greater than comes to the majority of your fellows. To you and your kind, much has been given, and from you much should be expected. Yet there are certain failings against which it is especially incumbent that both men trained and trained and cultivated intellect and men of inherited wealth and position should especially guard themselves, because in these failings they are especially liable, and if yielded to, your chances of useful service are at an end. Let the man of learning, the man of lettered leisure, beware of that queer and cheap temptation to pose to himself and to others as the cynic, as the man who has outgrown emotions and beliefs, the man to whom good and evil are as one. The poorest way to face life is to face it with a sneer. There are many men who feel a kind of twisted pride and cynicism. There are many who confine themselves to criticism of the way others do what they themselves dare not even attempt. There is no more unhealthy being, no man less worthy of respect than he who either really holds or feigns to hold an attitude of sneering disbelief toward all that is great and lofty, whether in achievement or in that noble effect which, even if it fails, comes second to achievement. A cynical habit of thought and speech, a readiness to criticize work which the critic himself never tries to perform, an intellectual aloofness which will not accept contact with life's realities. All these are marks, not as the possessor would feign to think, of superiority, but of weakness. They mark the men unfit to bear their part manfully in the stern strife of living, who seek in the affectation of contempt for the achievement of others to hide from others and from themselves their own weakness. The role is easy, there is none easier, save only the role of the man who sneers alike at both criticism and performance. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of the deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and blood and sweat, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in such a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who never know victory nor defeat. Y'all, this quote, it just gets me every time. I don't want to be someone who sneers, and much worse so. And this time this really stood out to me. He says, the role is easy. There is none easier, save only the role of the man who sneers alike at both criticism and performance. So it's like worse even still to be the one who stands on the sideline sneering at the one in the arena. Worse still is the one who stands even two steps back and sneers at the one being critical and the one in the arena. So this is like a big old mirror for us of, man, okay, where in my life am I striving greatly? Where in my life am I being vulnerable? In the words of Brené Brown, uncertainty, risk, and exposure. And Brian, like you said, where are we actually allowing ourselves to potentially face rejection? And y'all, if we're never letting ourselves get to that point of risk, to that point of exposure, to the point of uncertainty, we should never expect our lives to really change or change drastically, to change quickly. Because in order for something new to occur, we ourselves have to be able to become new. And we have to put ourselves in that environment for the newness to take shape. And if it's new, we don't know it yet. And so that's the fun adventure of this whole process of coming to know, is acknowledging, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm so excited to see what happens. It's letting go of the certainty over which we hold for our beliefs, for our friends, for our family, for our work and business, for life. Really, really letting go of, all right, I'm going to let myself be surprised today. I'm going to let something new happen. It's letting go of those old programs that really keep us stuck in the same place, repeating the same thing over and over again. Just tuning in here to the chat. Elijah, I'm glad you're here. It's interesting what you're saying. I feel like I don't know. I don't really know how to engage with your comments right now. Nicholas, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming on. Hiromu, good to see you. I'm Japanese. My name is Hiromu. Thank you for coming. I'm so glad you're here. Mystic, thank you. Thank you for being so be nice and respectful. Thank you. Ben, Australian. Are you Australian? I am not Australian. I am Oh, sorry, I got distracted. I am not Australian, no. Although I would love to go to Australia. James, I'm so glad you're here. I took your advice and started tidying my room. I love that. How's it going? How's it going? I want to know about you with your parents too. What's going on there? Elijah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to engage with what you're saying, but I'm glad you're here. Nicholas, thank you. Ancient Eden, no point to healing. There will always be people who dislike you. Be like the hard rock face of a cliff that smashes up against the ocean. What an interesting point of view. I know a lot of folks actually who hold that perspective rather. A friend of mine, she actually very much so has taken a stance of stoicism to intentionally not feel anything and then intentionally not feel pain. And it was because she had a stillborn. And I cannot imagine the pain in holding this baby boy inside of you for 9 months and then it passing away. I think it passed away in a matter of hours. And I just cannot fathom. And so she made the decision to not feel anymore. And she just like turned off her soul. And I know that there are people who do that. And that's everyone's choice. Am I going to be vulnerable? Am I going to turn off my feelings and turn off that kind of right hemisphere of the brain? Or am I going to allow for the pain to be felt, to allow for the grief that I feel over this loss to be a testament? I read that quote when my brother-in-law was killed. He said, every lament is a love song over the one lost. And I don't know about you, but I think that's a beautiful way to honor someone who's gone. But I know what you mean. It's like turning your face and making it what is it? Flint. Like really hardening yourself. I don't know. I don't want to live that way. That's how I want to live experiencing life, and I have found that in order to truly experience it, I need to feel it. But I want to hear more about your thoughts here because I found that most of the time when we choose to turn off our feelings, it's because there's so much pain there. So I can only imagine going through that amount of pain and well, I think losing my brother was a lot of pain. And my sister, she went through that and she's still chosen to feel and to love again. She loves her daughter, because here's the thing once you lose one person, you could say, oh, I might lose everybody else in my life. And then you actually stop loving them. And because that's kind of the logical conclusion. Like if we're going to harden ourselves, then we actually logically should stop loving everyone. And then my question is what is the point thereafter? Like what is the reason for us being here? Um and but then ancient eating, you say no one can save you. You can only save yourself. I I have found that to be so true that no amount of saving from the external places is going to do the work that I can do. And the work that I can do in concert with God. Like I actually really have found that me going inward and me coming to know who I am rather than fixating my gaze outward and upward, even me going inward and being like, God, who did you make me to be? And coming to know who I am, I have experienced God in such a bigger and better way than I ever had before because I was still looking outward. But if I am made in his image, if I am like him, if Christ is in me, and I'm ignoring me, then I'm ignoring a big part of who God is. It's just like ignoring the emotions. I'm ignoring a part of 50% of me. How can I ever really know me then to begin with? How can I ever really know God if I'm ignoring him in me? That there's a disconnect there. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in that regard. Um, oh, I'm so glad. Day Marcus, thank you. Day Marcus Sullivan, thank you for coming on here. I'm so glad. The UK Savior, I'm glad you're back. Good to see you. Jimmy Armstrong, Pittsburgh, Mississippi. Thank you for the live show. I'm glad you're here, Jimmy. We talk all things intelligences here. So we talk intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence. Brian's, yeah, I'm glad. That's so funny. Dominic, Jackie Chan. Is that a quote? No, that's by Theodore Roosevelt. Well, the quote I was reading earlier was by Theodore Roosevelt. Um, Elijah, you said, I have been rejected my entire life and I've got nothing to lose. I have to tell you, I respect that so much, Elijah. Elijah, there's something around what you just said that I think every single one of us needs to experience. And growing up in a safe, curated environment, hiding behind these things actually really can prevent us from really feeling the full frontal attack of rejection. I you were talking about corporate earlier. Well, my life isn't very corporate. It's more so entrepreneurial, but in terms of business, just a quick story. Brian, I think you heard this earlier today. I went around and was like, I need to conquer my fear of sales. Like I hate selling. You guys, I don't even know if you know what I sell, like what I offer in my business. Like I never like talking about it because I hate being sold to. So I went out and I did cold door knocking, and I went to a couple offices, and it was the worst experience of my life. And I got rejected because I lacked so much confidence. And Elijah, what you just said, I've been rejected my whole life and I've got nothing to lose. I I lived such a carefully curated life in my own little bubble where I only went and moved in spaces where I knew I could win, and then I never risked. So I never fell flat on my face. I got to tell you, it's actually been so good to get all the hate mail, because then I'm like, all right, I actually am training my mind to become impervious. But here's the thing that's so interesting is that we have to actually be impervious to the rejection as well as to the compliments. That's the thing where it's like, do I have enough value in who I am, in my own work in the arena to take pride in that, in my own efforts, having that kind of relationship with myself? Like, y'all, when we think about vulnerability, the more vulnerable you and I are with ourselves first, tending to ourselves and really proving to be a caretaker of our own souls, being the parent that we need in order to heal, frankly, we then engage with other people in a way that we're already kind of good. Like you said, Elijah, you've been rejected my whole life. I've got nothing to lose. Like you have that relationship with yourself. You've done the work in the past to be able to move forward with a confidence where you can be rejected by the external world and you're good. I'm sure it's not fun, but that's so important. And the more we hide in behind here, even, the chat here, some of these things, I'm reading right now. I'm looking at one of them and I'm like, I don't like how that sounds. I don't like that they said that. And I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm in the arena right now, right here with you. I'm in the arena doing the work and cultivating my own, like, what do I think about vulnerability? What do you think about vulnerability? We're doing the work together by way of asking these questions of who are we? What are we made of? What happens when I'm stripped bare? What happens when I'm broken open? What's inside? Who is that? And am I proud of what I see? Y'all, we are building our legacy one moment at a time. Every single day, we are making choices that will amalgamate into the end of our lives where we look back and we're like, man, I'm so grateful for those people, those places. Like even, who was it? Who just said this? DeMarcus says, don't know why, but I liked it and subscribed and I like what's going on with everyone. Like, this resonates and the chat resonates, and y'all, we're here and we get to do the work together and we get to support each other. We've had Sammy in here a couple weeks, over the last couple of weeks, and he shared that it was the anniversary of when he broke his neck and became a quadriplegic, and we got to love on this amazing man, and he's able to listen and tune in, and every single one of us has something in our lives that is bringing life to other people. And the question is, what is that for you? And I'd love to know what it is in the chat. Do you guys mind? Do you mind telling in the chat, like, what what is your superpower? I was talking to a mastermind group this was probably last summer. I was talking to a mastermind group and helping them with branding. And before we got started, just kind of as an icebreaker, I asked everyone, what's your superpower? And people were kind of like, why are you asking us this? Because that's not what you talk about in business. But everyone started sharing. And as they shared, their eyes lit up and they had a story associated with it. They had a why, and they loved talking about the very thing that makes them special. And as everybody shared, other people got engaged and they're like, oh man, I totally see what you mean. I loved that when I was a kid. And oh my gosh, my high school experiences, they all started just lighting up where before, frankly, it was a very boring group. And as we all shared, as the vulnerability came forward about this is what I'm really good at, and people were reticent to share, and then they shared why they were good at it and why they loved it. And there was a story, and often there was something tied to a really special person or a special moment about why this is their thing. And then I asked them, I said, okay, go to your website, go to your social media. Where do you show up? Not a single one of them had any part about them on their website, on their social media. So we hide. We hide behind either what we're selling, the irony there. We hide behind all these different things that we think other people want to see rather than unveiling who we really are. Okay, I'm going to look here in the superpower. I'm so excited. Um, all right. 2 rep 693. Diffusing tense situations. God freaking bless you. I I want to learn how to do that. Brian TB, my superpower is caring. Man, I feel like you're an angel. I I love that you just said that. Okay. Well, Stephen, I'm glad for you. Brian, the stuff that holds things together, the net. Wow. Man, I feel like there's a story there. Joe. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, Elijah. My superpower is trolling. All right. Well, anyways, I enjoyed the genuine responses. Y'all, these are the things. These are the things that make us so needed in this world. Like, I want to Allegheny. Oh, I love, man, good for you. Superpower. My superpower is cold water polar plunging. Dude, good for you. I love that. Um, the UK savior says, my superpower is I love too much. Wow. Mm. Christopher Adams, good question. I think my superpower is having an approachable aura where anyone can come and talk to me about their struggles. I'm the therapist in a friend group. I love that. Y'all, each one of these, each one of these is so important. Each one of these is invaluable. And frankly, each one of these is vulnerable. Like, that's a vulnerable thing to love too much, to care, to be the net that holds everyone together, to be the person that everyone comes and talks to. You know what? There is something even Allegheny to what you're saying is the cold water polar plunging. So many people won't do that because it's risky, it's uncertain, it's awful. And so I love each one of these. And y'all, each one of these is a very key reason for why it is so important that you and I are here. My definition of even you, Stephen. I love that. Yes, you too, Stephen. Oh my gosh. The way I at first defined vulnerability because I was thinking about it from more so a emotional lens. And this is maybe not even emotional, it's relational. In terms of relational dynamics with ourselves, with others, and with God. Um, there's going back to this biblical story, which someone actually told this to me. So, right, my when my husband left, it was 2022 when everything was like officially signed, and you know, no one talks about grieving the living. They talk about grieving the dead, but not grieving the living. And so there was just this season of my life where I was like the walking dead of my own because I was dying, like the old Christine was dying and my future was dying and so many parts of me were dying. So I really was like just walking around wondering what the dickens was going on in life. And this woman came to me and she and I got together for 45 minutes. It was so brief, but someone was like, "You guys have to meet." And she told me this story. She said, "There's this story about this woman who," and this is, from the Bible. There's a lot of good stories in there, just like there are good stories in every book. So bear with me if you're not a Bible reader. She said that the story in the Bible was that this woman really, really wanted a son, and every year her family would go to the temple, which was tradition, and they would pray to God. But she wouldn't go, and she would be just so upset around not having a child. And so one year, finally, after she was kind of getting verbally abused by her sister wife, ironically, who had lots of kids, she goes to the temple, and there's this verse that says she poured out her soul before the Lord. And that concept of pouring out our soul is what I think of as vulnerability. And there's a big difference between vulnerability and authenticity, and that's a whole other show. But this whole concept of pouring out our soul and allowing everything that's inside of us to come out. And what's most important, we have to first know what's inside in order to then pour it out. And then in the story, it says she poured out her soul and then God heard her prayer. Because y'all, if we're monitoring or adjusting or editing what's coming out of us, we're not really being raw. We're not really showing up and really letting other people know us, letting God know us, and letting ourselves know us. And so we have to do the act of pouring out the soul. And I just like, as I was thinking about the conversation for today, I just had this like picture in my mind of somebody sitting there with their arms crossed. And there's clearly something wrong, whether it's in relationship, whether it's about something that's happening in our lives, whether it's at God, and we're there with our arms crossed and we're kind of being sassy or we're being angry. And the point here is that our arms are crossed and we're keeping it inside. But man, the second we actually unfold our arms and allow for the layers and layers and layers, we have to move through the grief we have to move through the anger to get to the grief, to get to the shame, to get to really the root of the pain. Like David Hawkins talks about in his book, there's layers and levels of emotions, and underneath the layers, then we can really get to the grief. And so we have to get to the root issue of whatever it is, but we can't do that while our arms are crossed. We can't do that while we're shaking our fist at the heavens. We can do that only when we actually allow our heart to really be poured out. And there was this moment when I think it was the summer of 2022, and I was flying back from somewhere. I don't know. I was living kind of nomadic at the time. And so I was at the airport parking lot. And I saw this family. They were heading to the airport and they had their 2 little kids. And I just like saw them and I leaned back on my car. And I was like, all right, God, I really want to have kids. And in just me saying those words, like really being honest, all of a sudden it was like this pent up grief just came out. And so each time we allow for the truth to be seen and spoken and felt, it's another wave of release. And in the release, it actually then now no longer our arms crossed and we're being angry and sassy and whatever the emotion is associated with that, but we're closed off. We're closed off from being able to pour out. We're also closed off from being able to receive. Once we actually allow, and it's almost like this sigh of relief to get it out. Once we release it, then we can receive something. Then we can receive something new. So just checking in here with the chat. I love these superpowers. Yeah, Allegheny. Everything springs from the cold. What a good point. Just scrolling through here. The UK Savior. I did. He left. How long are you streaming for? UK, I'm actually wrapping up now. I need to go live on Foundation first. Yeah, go get a podcast on and sleep. You should do that. I'm about to go live on my other show and talk all the marketing things that Elijah, I don't know if you want to hear. UK says, and I have a story like that when I came back to England from Philippines. Saw a mom and her kids with end of family, and I was like, man, it's funny, isn't it weird how those moments when we see other people, all of a sudden it hits you and it's like, I didn't even know I wanted it, and I didn't even know I wanted it that bad. But in the openness of even voicing it and allowing it to be known, I think that actually starts preparing us for the receiving process too. Explorer, I'm so glad to see you. I have asked a question to your guest, and both of you were kind. Yes, I remember that. Dustin Reichman, I think that was it. But I'm so glad you're back. Good to see you. Brian, I've got 2 questions from you that I need to answer. I'm going to write them down, and that's what I'm going to make tomorrow night's show about, those 2 questions. And I got to sit with your one here because that was really, really good. And I don't want to do throwaways. Yes. Oh, I think I might have a guest tomorrow. I have to take a look. Okay. If I have a guest tomorrow night, I'm still going to make sure that we answer it. I have an 8:30 p.m. Eastern, and then I'm also going to be going live tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern for A Course in Miracles. So otherwise, I'm going to be hopping over to Foundation First Marketing. If you guys want to join me, I'd be so happy to see you there. We're talking marketing. We're talking about the last couple of days we've been leading up to, moving through succession. If you want to have your business move through succession in your family, or you're prepping it for sale or scale. And then today we're talking about what constitutes a good brand. So otherwise, I really, really love tonight. I'm just looking here at the chat really fast before I jump off. Oh, 2Rep, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for joining, y'all. It's been so much fun. I used to do these shows without many comments, and it's so fun I feel like we have a little tribe here, and it's very fun to see you guys. Justice, good luck with that. All right, y'all. I am going to hop out. Oh, Allegheny says, what do you think your superpower is? I think it's asking questions. So actually, I love having guests on here because I love asking questions. But my friend was saying I should have people on here where we actually move through the knowing framework together, so that guests, some guests can be almost more like you guys get a little witness into what a knowing retreat would be. I don't actually, would you guys be interested in that? Like, would that be interesting if I had somebody on here and we effectively like went into the arena together? I'll wait for answers. I don't know if you guys would enjoy that. It seems so personal, and frankly, I'm like, who would want to do that publicly? Because when I do start answering or asking questions, that was one of the things, the very first retreat I hosted in 2024, they were like, you just don't stop. But it was really like, that's when you get to the root, but I hope that they would say this, and they actually, well, they did, just that it was lovingly done, but it was not relenting, not stopping at the surface level answer, but really digging deeper, with love and so much care. All right. Here we go. Here are the answers. Explore. My goal is to go live every single day at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. This morning I went live at 4:20 because I had a flight, and 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And actually Christopher, I'd love to do a one-to-one with you at some point. That'd be incredible. Let's do it. Oh, I would love that. Ryan just subscribed. Yay. All right. Aliani said yes too. All right. So then do this, y'all. If you're really up for it, I have to find this form. Where is it? I actually think it's in the chat. Or no, it's not in the chat. It's in the description of the show. Let me pull up the link really fast. And if you guys want to do the one-to-one, let's do it. As long as you mean it. I don't want there to be any regrets. All right, I am pulling up. Hold on. Let me pull up this for you guys. I'm going to drop this link in the chat. Fill that out, and when it says comments or questions, go ahead and put on, I want to do the knowing framework with Christene. So and then Patricia, who reviews the form, she'll let me know that, and then we'll get y'all scheduled. Yay, that's so exciting. All right, y'all, I'm going to go over to Foundation First and talk about marketing, and then I will go to bed. So thank you all so much for joining me tonight. It was so good to see you all. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, and then again tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, or in just a few minutes on Foundation First Marketing. All right. Good night, y'all.